In this lecture, we are going to learn how to read request body from an ASP.NET Core application. Now, we cannot use browser to specify the request body without first creating a web page. Also, we learned that with the GET request, we should not send a request body. And using browsers, we can only make GET requests right now because we don't have a web page like sign-in form or registration form using which we can send a post request to the server. And that's why in this lecture, we are going to use a tool called Postman. Using this Postman tool, we can make different types of requests. So Postman is a very popular and useful tool for testing web APIs and controllers. Using this tool, we can send different types of requests to the server. We can also set the request headers using this tool, which is not possible with browser as a client. And using this tool, we can also specify the body for the request, and we can also set the body format for the request. And there are other advantages of using this tool as well. So we are going to use this tool to send a post request to our ASP.NET Core application with some request body. So here, if you want to download this Postman tool in your local machine, you can go to postman.com and there you can go to this products dropdown, and from there you can select get started for free. In this page, the operating system of your machine will be automatically selected and that can be shown inside this button. So when you click on this button, an installer will be downloaded. Double click on that installer. It will open the installation window and follow the installation steps. Installation steps are very easy. It just has some standard installation steps. Once the Postman is installed on your machine, you can open it. And this is how the welcome page will look like. Now here I have selected the dark theme, but when you will open this Postman for the first time, there you will get the option to select the light theme or dark theme. So based on your preference, you can select your theme. And when we are on this page, the first thing which I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new workspace. So for that, we can click on this create workspace and here I will name it as ASP.NET Core. Okay, let me go ahead and let me click on this create workspace. It might take few seconds. So here the workspace has been created. Let's click on this go to workspace button. Okay, so here we have this overview tab. Let's close this overview tab and let's click on this plus button. And now from here, you can make any type of request. For example, you can click on this drop down and there you will see a bunch of HTTP methods. So here we have this get method, post method, put method, patch method, delete method. So these are the 5 HTTP methods which we talked about in our last lecture. Apart from that, we have also other HTTP methods like copy, head, options, links, etc. Okay, so from this drop down, you can select the type of HTTP method with which you want to make a request. Then here you can enter the URL to which you want to make the request. And once you will click on this send button, based on the HTTP method you have selected and the URL you have typed, that request will be sent. And before sending the request, here you can set request headers, request body, etc. Okay, so if you want to add request headers, you can go to this headers section and there you can add your own headers. For example, is authorized. Okay, and you can set some value for that. Let's say false. So this is authorized. It is not a predefined header. It is a custom header. In the same way, you can also specify some body for the request which you want to send with the request. So for example, let's say we are making a post request. Now in case of a post request, we also need to send some data with the post request. So here you can specify that data which you want to send with the request. And here you can select the type of data which you want to send. For example, if you want to send something like form data, you can specify the key and the value here. If you want to send raw data, basically raw data means either text, JSON or XML. So for example, if you want to send some JSON data, that also you can specify it here. For that you can select raw and then from this drop down you can select JSON. If you want to send XML data, you can select XML. Okay, so here you can set the request body, you can set the request headers, you can also set the authorizations. Okay, so here you can do all kind of settings for the request and here you will get the response. Okay, so we are going to use this tool for sending post requests to our ASP.NET Core application because as I mentioned earlier, with the browser we cannot send a post request without creating a web page. All right, now let's go back to our ASP.NET Core application. And here, what I'm going to do is, I'm also going to read the HTTP method. The HTTP method which has been used to make the request. So let me copy this line of code. And we have learned that in order to read the HTTP method, the HTTP verb which has been used to make the request, on this request object, we can use the method property. Okay, so it is going to return us the HTTP method which has been used in order to make the request. Let's call this variable as method. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is, here inside this else if statement where we are checking for this slash products path, before checking this path, I'm also going to check if the method, if it is equal to get. Okay, then only we want to check the path. So if the method is get and the path is slash products, then we want to execute this logic. Otherwise, let's write another else if statement. And inside this if condition, let me copy this line, this condition. And there we want to check if the method is post. So if the method is post and path is slash products, then in that case, we want to execute this code block. Okay, so whatever code we have inside this code block, that is what we want to execute. And we want to execute this block of code whenever a post request is made on this slash product. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's run this application. And let's make a request, a GET request to this root URL slash product. If I press enter, this is the response which we are getting. Okay, and here we are making a GET request. Let me copy this URL. Let's go to Postman. And from there also, let's make a request to this URL and let's make a GET request. So when I click on this send button, in the response, we should receive the same text. You are in product page, as you can see here. Now, to the same URL, let's make a post request. And with this post request, we also want to send some body. So here, let's say maybe demo text. Okay, so this is the text which we want to send with the request body. And we want to read this text from our ASP.NET Core application. How can we do that? Let's see that. Let me stop the application. And in order to read the request body, first of all, on the context object, let's first access the request object. And this request object has a body property. And this body property is going to return us the request body. But keep in mind that this body property is not going to return us a string. It is going to return us a stream. Okay, so just like we have file stream, we also have a request stream. So this body property here, it is going to return us a stream. And in order to read data from that stream, first we need to create an instance of stream reader. So here, let's go ahead and let's create an instance of stream reader. Okay, let's call it maybe reader equals new stream reader. Okay, and to this stream reader, to the constructor of this stream reader, let's pass this body. So I will cut it from here and I'll pass it here to this stream reader constructor. And now on this reader object, in order to read the body, we can call read to end async. Okay, so we can call this method in order to read the request body from this stream. And since it is going to run asynchronously, this method is going to run asynchronously, we want to wait till this method finishes reading the data from this stream reader. So for that, here I'm going to use await keyword. And once this method has read the data from the stream reader, it is going to return it. So we are going to store it in a variable and it is going to return that data as a string. So here, let's go ahead and let's create a string variable. Let's call it maybe data. And whatever this read to end async method is going to return, we are storing that data inside this data variable. And finally, let's also send that data in the response. So I will copy this line of code and I will paste it here. And here, let's say request body contains, and then we want to append the value stored in the data variable. All right, with that, let's save the changes. Let's run this application. Okay, so first we need to run this application so that this application gets executed in the browser, then only we can make a request from the Postman. Because as long as this application is running in the browser, the server is up and running. If we close this browser, in that case, the server will also get closed. And in that case, we will not be able to make requests from the Postman tool. So we need to keep this browser running. Then only from the Postman we can make the request. So again, let's go ahead and let's make a post request to the same URL. And there we are also sending some request body. If I click on this send button, in the response we should receive request body contains demo text. Now let's pass some other body. Let's say another demo text. Okay, and again if I make the request, then in the response we should receive request body contains another demo text. Okay, so this is how we can read request body from our ASP.NET Core application using these two lines of code. Now here, from the Postman, currently we are sending a simple text data in the request body. But in most of the cases, the plain text will not be sent as the request body. In general, the request body will be either form data or URL encoded form, or it will be raw. That means either JSON data or XML data. We are very rarely going to send some plain text in the request body. And when we talked about query strings, there we learned that we should send query string only with the GET request and not with the POST request. If we want to send some query string with the POST request, we should send it in the request body and not in the URL. Right. So here, let's try to send some query string in the request body of the POST request. So here, let's say I want to have this ID query string, and let's say the value is 101. And I also want to have a name query string, and let's say name is iPhone. So I want to send this data as the request body, and I want to read this data from our ASP.NET Core application. So if I click on this send button, okay, currently we have stopped our application. So let me first run this application. And now let me also put a breakpoint here. Okay, and let me go ahead and let me make a post request to this URL. So if I click on this send button, here we have hit this breakpoint. If I press F10 and F10 again, in the data, you will see that we have that text. As you can see, we have this ID with the value 101, and then we have this ampersand, and we have this name query string with the value iPhone. So it has read this data, this query string as it is, as we have specified in the request body. But we want to have this query string in a dictionary as a key value pair. Right. Here, by default, when we have used this body property, it is not reading the data, this query string as a key value pair. It is reading it as a plain text. But we want this query string in a dictionary in the form of a key value pair so that it will be easy for us to use. So how can we do that? Let's see that. Let me close this. Let's also stop this application. So basically, the conversion of query string from string format to dictionary is called as parsing. And in ASP.NET Core, there is a predefined class that can be used to convert the query string from string format to dictionary format. For that, first of all, we need to include a namespace. So here, let's include that namespace, and that namespace is Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.WebUtilities. And in this namespace, we have a class. That class name is query helper. And in this class, we have a method called parse query. Okay, and to this parse query, we can pass the data which we want to pass, the query string which we want to pass. Now here, the query string we are storing inside this data variable. So we are going to pass that data variable here. Basically, in the request body, we are passing some query string. So this body is going to return us that query string. Right, so that query string will be stored inside this data variable. And we are passing that query string as an argument to this parse query. So what this parse query will do is, it is going to pass this string data, the data which contains the query string. It is going to parse it, and it is going to create a dictionary, and in that dictionary, the query string will be stored as a key value pair. So we can store that dictionary in a variable. For that, here let's create a variable of type dictionary. Okay, let's call it maybe dict. And this dictionary is going to have a key of type string and value of type string values. Keep this point in mind. And in order to use the string values, we need to import this namespace microsoft.extensions.primitives. All right. Now, why are we using this string values? Why aren't we using directly string here? That's because when we are passing a query string here we can also specify a key multiple times. For example, here I can say and name equals Samsung. Okay, so here we have this name query string two times, but both the times it has two different values. So we can specify the same key multiple times and it can have different values. So here, if we use string, that string can only store a single value, but the string values can store multiple values. And that's why the type here is string values. Okay, so here we are converting the query string, which is in the plain text format, which is in the string format, into a dictionary. So in that dictionary, the query string will be stored as a key value pair. And now we can go ahead and we can use that query string. So here, let's first check if a given query string is available inside this dict dictionary or not. So here, let's say dict, and on that, let's use this contains key method. And there, let's pass the query string which we want to check. Here, I want to check whether this ID query string is present inside this dict dictionary or not. If it is present, in that case, let me go ahead and let me create a variable. I will call it ID, and initially I will assign it with empty string. And here I will set that ID with the ID query string. For that, on this dict, we can use this ID as a key. Okay, so this expression here is going to return us the value of this ID query string, and we are storing it inside this ID variable. In the same way, let me copy this if statement. Let me paste it here, and here let's also check if we have the name key. Okay, now keep in mind that here we are specifying this name key two times. That means we are going to have two values for this name key. But from those two values, let's say I only want to use one value. So here I will specify another square bracket, and in there I will specify the index as 0. So here I only want to use the first value of the name key. Now in the response, let's change this response, and here let's say ID is, and here let me also go ahead and let me create a name variable. Initially let's set it to empty string. Okay, and here let's call it name. All right, so here let's say ID is, and then the ID variable. Okay, let's give a line break, and then let's say name is, and then let's use the name variable. All right, with this, let's run this application. Okay, so the application is now running. Let's go to Postman. From there, let's make a request with this body. Okay, and here we are making a post request. So when I click on this send button, here it is hitting this breakpoint. Let's say F10, 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 F10. And if I go to this data, there you will see that we have that query string as a string value, as a plain text. Okay, let me close this, and let's again say F10. And now if I go to this dictionary, there you will see we have two key value pairs. The first key value pair, there the key is ID and the value is 101. And in the second key value pair, the key is name, and there we have two values, iPhone and Samsung. Right? So this is what this string value does. It can store multiple string values. All right, with that, we are checking if this ID is available in this dictionary or not. And it is available. So if I press F10, it should go inside this if statement, and there it should set this ID value. So ID value here should be 101, as you can see. Then we are checking if this dictionary contains the name key or not, and it does contain a name key. So in that case, this name key will be set with the first value in this string values. Right, in this string values, the first value is iPhone. So with that value, this name is assigned. So let me continue this, and let's go back to Postman, and there you will see in the response we have ID is 101 and name is iPhone. Now, if a dictionary is returning multiple values, and if you want to read all those values, then you can also loop over that, that key using the for each loop. But I'm not going to do that here. So this is how we can convert a query string in the request body to a dictionary using this query helper.parse query method. Now here you might say that isn't it too complicated to read the request body in case of ASP.NET Go? Yes, it is. So whatever I have shown you in this lecture, it is the original way, or you can say the fundamental way of reading request body. But this is not how we are going to do it when we create real-world projects using MVC architecture. In real-world projects, we use model binding concept to read any type of information from the request, whether it is request body, request header, or anything. So we are going to learn that way also when we will start learning about MVC architecture. But it's always good to know the basics of any concept before learning advanced topics, right? And that's what we have tried to do here. Here, we have tried to learn the basic concepts first. Alright, so this is all from this lecture. If you have any questions from this lecture, then feel free to ask it. Thank you for listening and have a great day.